DetectBee identifies existing and emerging threats to your company by analyzing both your company and all of the companies and organizations you work with. 56% of all cybersecurity breaches come from suppliers and other business partners. So DetectBee identifies weaknesses in that population, the entire hive, and shares specific and actionable information with you and your partner organizations to keep everyone updated about progress and safer. So in today's demo, we're going to walk through a couple of aspects of our application and show you how we help to protect the entire hive and keep everyone safer. Existing users can log in using their credentials, but new users can immediately join the community. They may have received an invitation from a vendor or from a client, or they might have been invited by somebody already within their organization who's delegated aspects of security to them. So let's get started by logging in with our Google credentials using OAuth. And you can see immediately the application sort of steps you through an onboarding procedure using a wizard-like workflow. And in today's demo, we're going to take you through all of the steps required to take a look at websites and software, passwords, as well as your allies and their infrastructure, all in an effort to alert you to existing threats and threats that may be emerging. So as I mentioned, you may have received an invitation from someone in your organization, or you may want to delegate portions of your infrastructure to someone else, which you can do right here. But we're going to step through all of it. So first, we're going to enter our website, and it's any website that we might own or manage using our own domains. So in this example today, we're going to be using bigbrandsupplycompany.com, and we'd enter that information and just step right through. Now it'll ask us if we manage other things like email servers or HR portals or something else in our infrastructure. And if we're confused by anything, we get tooltips that sort of help us understand what each item might mean along the way. And we can add more, as many as we need. And then when we're done, the application tells us, hey, it's found 3 websites that we manage that have some risk. And at the conclusion of the survey, it'll tell us what we might do to fix those risks. So the second step is to identify passwords. And since we identified that we use a mail server, this mail.bbsco.io, that's the domain where our mail server is hosted, it automatically populated that. Now, we could, of course, add anything else that we want in terms of passwords, or we can continue. And if we continue, we can also enter additional non-domain-based profiles. Like, for example, a lot of companies do use generic Gmail accounts, though they shouldn't, but they do anyway, for things like Google Analytics or a lot of data providers. Sometimes departments will share credentials. So this is a way for companies to enter email addresses that may not be attached to their mail domain or their primary domain. You can also import from a CSV or add another. And you can see that the interface has told us that there are 26 passwords at risk. So we will continue on. And in the software section, we can add as much software that we use. That might be cloud-based software or end-user applications or system software. And in this case, we've started to type MailChimp. It does give us search suggest, but it also uses faceted navigation. So if we didn't start typing MailChimp, it would show everything within all of these different infrastructures. But as we start typing, it will remove those things that are no longer applicable. And we continue to add as much software as we need to until we're done. And it's found 15 softwares that we use that are at risk. And then in the fourth step, we can take a look at other companies that we do business with, either clients or vendors or business partners. You can add that company name. If you want to, you can connect to an API if you use either a CRM, a customer relationship management software, or if you have a procurement department, or accounting software, or accounts payable or receivable. You can also import from a list, and you can continue adding as many allies as you want. And then it did find 5 allies at risk. And then the last step here is a survey. It's just a short survey, and it only takes about 60 seconds to complete, or we can skip it. But we're going to just step through that survey right now. You can also skip any of these questions. So firstly, have we implemented a comprehensive threat management program? And if we're not sure what that is, again, there are tooltips that we can access that help us at each step along the way. Do we have password control rules? Do we require our employees to change their password at regular intervals? Do we have a firewall? And do we make sure that people connect via a VPN, which obviously in the current climate is really important. People are working from home. People are working not in the office normally during business anyway. And we obviously want to make sure that people are protected. And question number 4, the penultimate question, are you PCI compliant? Are you complying with FERPA and any other regulations for how you transact or store data? And then the last question, is there an IT department or a systems administrator, somebody who or department who centrally manages and updates information? And then when we're done, it will take us into the dashboard. Now, the first time you launch the dashboard, it will show an overlay tool, a simple onboarding tool. You can, of course, close out of that anytime you want, or you can let it step you through and explain exactly what the interface does and how you can work with the tool. And you can also invoke that at any time from any screen up at the top here. So we're looking at the immediate risks dashboard, and there are a few features to this. First, it shows risks from allies, and then risks from websites. Now, I'm going to close out of the tutorial because I'm just going to step you through that in the demo. So, risk from allies, risk from websites, perhaps stolen passwords or credentials that are at risk, and then lastly, software. So not only are these tools available, but also they're available from any place within DetectBee. You can also see data presented in a few different styles of dashboards. This is an immediate risk dashboard, but there's also a periscope or bullseye chart, which tells us, if we're here at the center, what are our risks, but also what are emerging risks across all of our allies and their networks. So we can really get a better idea about what are some of the things that are trending and may be a risk to us soon that are on the horizon. Also, when we think about risk is really something that's contextual. So based upon some of the things that we answered in our onboarding survey, we'll see information presented to us when we look at the latest threat news. So as we're inspecting here and we see a feed of all the news, the application will also tell us how that news item may be affecting us. So is there a breach, and are there credentials at risk? Was there a flaw in a particular application that leaked information? Maybe affiliates are at risk, or domains that we monitor. And if we think that there's no longer risk associated with any of these items, we can, of course, just mark them off as safe. So we'll know exactly, and our affiliates, our allies, will know exactly which things are emerging for them as well. Let's take a look at another aspect of the application, because DetectBee is also a social risk management tool. You can, at any time, take a look at the discussion board. You can start a post. But more importantly, as we inspect different aspects of dashboards for each of the different threats as they are emerging, you can also look at discussions specific to those threats, and we'll see that in just a minute. But let's say that we wanted to take a look at this item because it's obviously highly discussed, but also we are using this WordPress plugin, this pop-up builder. And it may be of risk to us. So we can read that, we can post a reply. We can also solicit help from experts in the community, which is an excellent way to get help, especially since DetectBee is all about not being an engineer. This is security and risk management for the average person. This is a really great way for you to solicit the help from somebody who's an expert in any particular area according to that particular threat. Also, as we're thinking about the survey and the onboarding, at any time you can add new items that you'd like to monitor from anywhere within the application. Let's go back to the dashboard here, and let's actually explore allies. And we can see how things are trending, also new risks that are exposed. And we here have 5 allies that we work with who are at risk. And we can see some of the details. Obviously, to protect their privacy, we can't investigate specifics of who their allies are or what their websites are, but we can see some of those details. And if we want to explore that further, we can also click in and see what are the immediate risks to this client, as well as what are some of those extended risks on the horizon. So you can get a really good idea about some of the long-term or short-term risks as they are trending and making their way towards your business. So that's allies, and let's take a look now at websites that may be at risk. And if you recall, websites are domains that we own that are part of our own infrastructure. So we have our website, and we have a shared calendar that we manage, and we also have a mail server, and we monitor both twisting, which is really about variations on domains. So if somebody is trying to spawn a phishing scam or trying to somehow mimic our business in some way, DetectBee will help identify that risk and offer ways to remediate. Also, it takes a look at DNS health, and it sees, is our domain blacklisted? Are there other types of DNS issues that we might want to resolve? But let's say we want to investigate this item here where we see that there's some variations, and one of those items actually has some risk. And we can see that there's a bit of twisting happening, but more importantly with this first item, the second item really isn't a problem, so let's mark that as safe. This first item, where there is an MX record, but there's not an A record, the application tells us that this twisted domain is at risk of phishing. And if we want to, we can jump right into a discussion about what that means, and we can see some guidance from experts, or as I said before, we can solicit the help of an expert and see how we might remediate that. But also importantly, we can tell our allies that we're assessing this, and that this is no longer just an unaddressed threat, but something that we are actively trying to remediate. Let's take a look at the next section on passwords, and we can see that there's probably something company-wide here that's going on where people are not really changing their passwords often enough. We can see that month over month, there's a 7% increase trending in pawned accounts, but that seems to be quite varied. So we might want to take a look at our password control policies. And we can also take a look at these things in bulk. We can also search on items. And if we want to, we can send individual users notices about credentials that may be at risk. And we can do that for all of their credentials at risk. Or in a second, you'll see how we might be able to do that for specific threats that have been identified. Or if somebody is safe, we can just mark them off as safe right here. But John.L we think might be a risk. So let's take a look at John. And we can see that there are a number of threats here that have been identified, some of which are quite old that we may have already addressed. Let's mark these as safe. But let's say that the Cafe Press item, relatively new, the remediation, the recommendation here is to change the password. We can immediately send a notice to John.L that'll come right from the application with the recommendation that he changes his password. Lastly, let's take a look at software, and you can see that some of the software was added at the beginning, but most of this software we didn't enter. And actually, DetectBee will scan anything that's publicly available under the domains that we entered, identify technologies, and run threat assessments against those technologies. So it sees that we're using Wix as our software piece. But we also have a number of points of integration, including a Stripe breach that it identified that may be affecting us. We do use Loxio Calendar for calendaring, and there was a a small threat with that. More importantly, we see with PeopleSoft and other types of infrastructure and technologies that we license or utilize, that there might be bigger threats for us to address. It tells us not only what the issues are, but also if we were to click through, it would make recommendations for how we could remediate, or we could jump into a discussion. And with that, I'm going to go back to the dashboard and just show one other aspect here, which is that the data points from the dashboard, which is really a great view for anybody on a daily or weekly basis, just to see the health, the overall security health of my organization. Some of those data points are different, and there are also different amounts of data, which over time might be customized in order to meet my particular business's needs. Thank you for your time, and we hope you enjoy the demo.